We back live again. I know it's been a while, been a long time coming. Gonna give some people some time to get on, but it's been a long time coming. Long time, long time. So we're gonna get back to our lives. If you're finding me for the first time, this is I'm Coach Renz. This is a deconstruction channel where we welcome to deconstructing Christianity, where we deconstruct Christianity for those people who have decided to walk away from this religion, where we have lively, respectful debate and conversations. Uh, if you're finding me for the first time and you like what you see and hear, then feel free to subscribe to the channel, share and like everything. And today, for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, we're going to talk about the fact that there is absolutely zero eyewitnesses in the Bible. Now, if you can prove me wrong, I look for you to prove me wrong until you can do so. But just be warned, I doubt if anybody's going to prove me wrong. I have been undefeated when it comes to that. So it'd be interesting to see if anybody actually has something that they can provide that would be actual proof that the Bible was written by eyewitness accounts. And we are going to go further into that discussion as we go through this next hour and a half um, of a conversation. And it would be great if people put their proof up there, or you can even come on. That's even fine. Matter of fact, let me set this one up on the. We're streaming on TikTok as well as what's the other thing? Facebook and YouTube. So you are more than welcome to have people on. I haven't done this in a while, so let me make sure I get it right for people who may want to come on the TikTok. I know I said I wasn't going live on TikTok ever again because TikTok is so irritating. I got to get some hearts up there for TikTok because, you know, the little, what's the little people? The little scrubs. They like the little trolls. They like to complain and whatnot. They like to do a lot of complaining because they get into their feelings, which a video that I just posted is posting right now on YouTube and Facebook. I posted it on TikTok already. It's like, if my disagreement with your religion doesn't affect your life in any way whatsoever, why do you get so upset? Why are you so triggered? So that video is posting right now, as well as a few other videos about 1 Samuel 18 and 19. But why do people get so triggered? Most people that I know who disagree with me, that I know personally, they just go on about their lives and live their lives. And we do the same here for people who have deconstructed. So the question today is, prove me wrong that there are no eyewitnesses, that there are eyewitnesses in your Bible. Prove me wrong. I would love for somebody to try to prove that that is an incorrect statement. Right? So if you want to come on, let me know. I'll send you the link for StreamYard. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, if you're on TikTok, then that's a whole different one. So TikTok people can't see what the Facebook and YouTube people are saying, but you know, it is what it is. One day I'll figure out a better streaming system where everybody can be on one system and see each other and talk to each other. But it is the claim of most Christians that the Bible was written by eyewitness accounts. And this is merely because they are being told that it's written by eyewitness account. Most Christians have never done the research as far as the historicity of their book to determine whether or not it was written by eyewitnesses or not. So there is literally, I'm going to say pretty much nothing in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, that can be attributed to an eyewitness account for anything in the Bible. Not the writings according, not the anything about Jesus, not the writings of Paul, the Old Testament. None of these things there is any proof of any eyewitnesses. Now I'm gonna have to put my glasses on from time to time to make sure I can read what everybody's saying. I'm glad to see you, Karen and Leo Phoenix. Eyewitness of what? Eyewitness of the Bible. Eyewitness that the Bible, the activities in the Bible actually happened. Eyewitness accounts of it, that it happened. Then you got proof that somebody did it, that somebody was there, they was viewing it, they saw it. and that any of your writings is proof of it. Let me go ahead and say the Gospels themselves start with the Gospel, the New Testament, since most people are Christians, they stand on the New Testament. The Gospels being named Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John was something that did not occur until around 180 CE, and it was dictated by Irenaeus in 180 CE. That before that, Justin Martyr called them the memoirs of the apostles because none of them had names. Matthew got named because in it tells the story of Jesus going to a dude named Matthew, and his name was Matthias, but going to a dude named Matthew, and that's how it became that. John, because they claim they say that we see these things as truthful as eyewitness testimony as far as the people who was writing John. So the question always has to be, who is the we in John that is claiming that they are writing based on what they believe to be true? So there are no eyewitnesses. Everything is written at the earliest a few decades later, but in most cases, things are written 100, and in the Old Testament case, sometimes 1,000+ years later. So there are no eyewitnesses accounts in the Bible. And I would love for somebody to say which ones are eyewitness account, which things are not, and be able to prove that any of these things are eyewitnesses or written by eyewitness. Rob C says that Paul wrote of his own eyewitness account, not of the resurrection, but of his encounter with Jesus. All right, so the letters of Paul is writing about his eyewitness account of him seeing Jesus, which is very interesting because when you look at the account of Paul and him witnessing Jesus, you can easily trace back and see that his account is very much the same that you will find in the accounts of Daedalus when it's talking about who is the wine god? God dang it, the wine god. I just fell out my head. The Greek wine god. The Greek wine god. But it is pretty much the same thing of him getting knocked off of a horse, him being blinded, and then all of a sudden he comes into relationship and worship of this deity. But even if it wasn't similar to some previous story, the fact remains that there is actually no proof beyond the writings that are attributed to Paul that Paul actually existed. There's no grave marker, there's no pottery, there's nothing that would suggest that this guy Paul was walking around. Now, even if he was walking around, Paul's saying that he witnessed Jesus and saw him and he got knocked off his horse and scales was over his eyes is the equivalent of people who worship Brahman saying that they had eyewitness account of Krishna. People saying that their mother or their father who had passed away came to them in a dream or showed up on the edge of their bed and talked to them and guide them. There's no proof of that. How can you prove that thing actually happening? So I can tell you right now, based on my own experience, for a long time, I believe that 3 days after, not 3 days, the 2 days after my grandfather passed away, that he was sitting on the edge of my bed telling me some things about the family. That's just my word. That's just what I'm saying I experienced with my grandfather. When after later on and thinking about it, the realization is I had a dream that my grandfather sat on the edge of my bed. That is not proof that my grandfather actually sat on the edge of my bed and talked to me when I was 15 years old when he passed away. So Paul writing saying that, oh, I saw Jesus is not proof of Jesus, because that is something that you cannot prove. In order for something to be proven, there has to be the possibility of observation and substantiation. And so Jesus coming to Paul cannot be observed, nor can it be substantiated, other than you just taking your belief and saying that this happened. I believe that it happened. So Paul's claim of Jesus is not proof. And the New Testament, there's no proof of any eyewitness to the New Testament. All of the New Testament was hearsay. None of it was written during the time frame of Jesus. No one was writing it down when they was walking around with him. No historian or playwright wrote about Jesus during the time frame of Jesus, who was living in the Levant at that time frame. So you just can't blurt out. You can blurt out New Testament, but you can't prove that there was any eyewitnesses. What's up, Brian? How you doing? Now, if there was any, Brian is saying if there ever was an eyewitness, you wouldn't be able to prove it today without doubt. Some people still need to be convinced not to smoke, do drugs. But are we asking if the accounts are true? Rob C said, are we asking if the accounts are true or that there were actual eyewitness accounts? You know, we can go both. Were they true or were they eyewitnesses? But see, here's the thing. In order for something to be true, you have to be able to observe it. So you have to have eyewitnesses in order to observe the fact that something happened, right? Without an eyewitness, you can't say that it happened or not. So either way, you need an eyewitness. There has to be an eyewitness. There has to be some witnesses, and to which we have none. Even when Paul claimed that 500 people saw Jesus, he was being told that by someone else. According to the writing, he was being told by someone else who was told by someone else that talked to some of the people who actually saw it. That's hearsay. Dionysius, thank you. Dionysius, thank you, Trauma. I always can count on my folks when I forget something. Appreciate it, Ian. But there's no way, you can't prove any of it. Just having somebody say it. And see, some of those miracles, and especially the miracle things, the miracles would leave some of the miracles would leave some type of results, some type of leftover. You would be able to see it based on archaeology. You would be able to see it. You'd be able to know it. We'd be able to prove it. But there's absolutely none of it that can be proved. Right. And as Brian is saying, a Christian will not accept Greek mythology or African mythology or Norse mythology or anything of that nature, but then they want to accept their mythology and they want you to accept their mythology. Thank you for the gift. I didn't even see that. So my apology for not seeing when people gave me the gifts on the TikTok. Thank you for the gifts. But I guess because I got this so damn big, let me just make that smaller. I don't want to be. I always try to respect people when they do things like that. Anytime somebody donates to the channel, I want to make sure I respect that. And praying for understanding is not proof. Praying for understanding is just you dwelling within really a confirmation bias of a delusional indoctrination that you went into to believe what you believe. Because if that was enough proof, then there are people who pray to Brahma and they believe that the things that happen in their life, the things that they've experienced, is proof that Brahma existed. So if a Christian is willing to accept, if you pray to some deity and then you experience something in your life and you attribute it to that deity, then that deity is real. That deity is true. But that doesn't make the deity true. That's just your confirmation bias of what you decided you're going to believe in and you've been indoctrinated into. So until you have some hardcore proof, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. I had challenged Christians, hey, make the hurricane dissipate. Make Milton dissipate before it gets to Florida. It didn't happen. And there were millions of Christians praying for the hurricane to move, to dissipate and not hit land. It didn't work. It didn't work. And Chris, you can say that 50, 11 times that once again, you're the Alpha and Omega. I never claimed to be anybody's God or to be the Alpha and Omega. And to say that there are many gods but one creator is a cop out. That's just straight up cop out. That's a cop out. Because who is this creator? You cannot prove that your creator exists. You can't prove that your creator exists. You see, unlike most Christians and most people who believe in different religions, I am fully confident and fully aware and have absolutely no problems of being able to say that there are just certain things that we're just simply not going to know. We just won't know we will live our entire life without knowing it. There were people who were born and raised and lived their entire life without ever knowing how clouds are formed and the rain actually comes and why there are droughts. They live their entire lives without knowing that, but yet they attribute it to some storm deity, i.e., in the Levant, the Canaanite god Yahweh is a storm deity. And so they attributed the storms to that deity because they didn't understand how cloud formations work, how rain works. So it must be some type of God that did it. So I'm fine with saying, I don't know how certain things in our known universe, how they exist. Why do they exist chaotically? Why do some things exist without chaos? But they all exist. Don't know how, but it does. So you can predict earthquake nowadays. Does that make someone God? And it doesn't. It doesn't. We can predict. We can see what the weather patterns are and what's coming up and what's not happening, what is happening. But that doesn't mean that you're now God. It just means that you develop the technology that allows you to be able to see when a storm is coming, um, and make preparations for it. So you left the church 22 years ago. It was the best thing you've ever done. Yeah, that has been one of the best things that I've ever done in my entire life. Uh, but I need some proof. I need some proof that your Bible was written by eyewitnesses, that your God exists, that the miracles happen. Because without that proof, we don't. How do we know airplanes fly? Because we get in them and we see them flying. We see them flying. An airplane, it flies. We know that it does. How do we know that the wind blows? You can stand outside and you can feel it. That's how we know the wind blows. We can measure it. We can test it, so we know that the wind blows. You've been in the Marine. Hey, Semper Fi, Devil Dog. Semper Fi, Devil Dog. Reloaded. And this is a big cop out. We got this guy Chris Flowers over here on YouTube, and he is using one of the big cop outs. Did you, are you the guy that did it? Did you make the wind blow? Did you make the sun? Did you do this? Did you? Simply because I cannot do it does not necessarily mean that you have a God that did it. That there was a God that did it. The God of the gaps don't work. So no. So Tupelo, and my bad, I forgot to, when I respond to somebody, throw it up on screen. Flavius Josephus was responsible, which was orchestrated by the Piso-Flavian dynasty. Yes, I agree with that um, completely. The Flavian dynasty instructed Josephus ben Matthias to write much of what has become your Bible, your New Testament. So it is a Roman creation with the usage of Hellenistic Jews, which would be Josephus ben Matthias, um, Philo of Alexander, also participated in that. And it's interesting. So we got a couple of Christians on here, but they're not providing anything that would say this is proof. So one of the things so let me help them out a little bit. So one of the things that I saw earlier today was a person was saying that the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I'm stealing this from Tia Deconstructionist video because she talked about this, but one person had questioned her, saying that because of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was found in the 11th century, and that the fact that the Dead Sea Scrolls are close to exact, but also have books in it at the Dead Sea Scrolls that are not in your Bible, that proves that the Bible is real. But all that proves is that somebody copied a literature that somebody else had wrote and copied it and copied it and wrote it and wrote it. What it doesn't do is prove that any of those stories actually happened. It doesn't prove that Isaiah happened the way Isaiah is told, and that Isaiah was the actual prophet who wrote all of it. When we can tell by the linguistic usage of style and words that Isaiah was written over a 200-year period. So even Isaiah is not written by an eyewitness. Only the first 30 to 40 chapters of Isaiah is probably written by Isaiah. So this is why I say there are very few things that have some level of eyewitness accounts. And that would be the first part of Isaiah writing during the time frame of the Assyrian conquest of Israel. So Isaiah is prophesying about the Assyrians and what's going on in Israel at that time frame. The part that fails is an angel came and killed 180,000 of the Assyrians, when there's actually no proof of that. And what we have found is that more than that, many of the Assyrian soldiers died from diseases from rats. That's what the archaeology shows when they've dug up bodies that they have found there. Other than that, you can't prove there's no angel involved here. It's rats, kind of like the bubonic plague. It's just an earlier version of the bubonic plague in a sense. So it's nothing different from that, right? Yes, Debrica, we're back. I will be doing lives more regularly now, especially after next week. I'll do some more next week. But on Thursday of next week, we'll start our journey of moving to San Antonio. So next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is going to be a little Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, Chris, if you can't keep it respectful, you can get off. You can easily get banned because nobody called you any names. So don't start calling people names. We're going to keep it 100 respectful on here without any problems. And like I said earlier, if somebody wants to come on, because I'm going to be on until probably around at the max 6 o'clock. If anybody wanted to come on, just let me know. No, I understand what you're saying, Mikhail. Mr. McLean, I like that. No offense, but actually, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found between 1947 and 1956. True, found during that time frame, but dated to have been written in and around the 11th century CE. So that's why I give it the date of 11th century CE, because that's the date that it is. Most scholars believe that it was written is during that time frame. Now, it could have been written even earlier, but that's what most scholars say the time frame it was written. Either have faith is either so Snoopy on TikTok. Either have faith is true, or you don't be glad alive in time and country where faith isn't forced. Now, I agree with you. You should. I am glad that I live in a time frame where people are not trying to force me, that the government is not trying to force me. People are trying to force you to believe in their narrative, but at least we don't live in a time frame where the government is forcing the person to do so. But we are living in a time in America where currently the government is trying to force people to believe in this Bible by trying to have it and put in our public school systems. So we have to be mindful to maintain that separation of church and state. I don't know about the New Testament, but the ancient prophets wrote their own books. No, the overwhelming majority of the ancient prophets did not write their own books. You have slight indications where Isaiah wrote the first 40 chapters of Isaiah, but the Pentateuch, the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, were clearly not written by Moses. And then one of the things that indicate that is Moses is writing about his own death. So how can he write if he's dead? How is he still writing the book of Deuteronomy? So he couldn't have been writing about his own death. And most of the literature that we have found concerning the Old Testament indicate that the majority of the first 5 books were written in or around the 10th and 9th century BCE, which would put it around 900 to 800 BCE. So that takes it out of the time frame that Moses could have existed. Moses would have existed in around the 1300s or 1200s BCE, but most likely around the 1200s BCE. So therefore, since the books were written 200 to 300 years later, Moses didn't write none of those books, none of them. Daniel has demonstrated itself to have been written after the Babylonian exile and during the time frame that um, the Levant was conquered by the Greeks. This is why the prophecies seem to line up initially, but then after the Greeks, the prophecies of Daniel don't line up anymore because they are pseudographical and written during the time frame after it. And that's what you have with many of them. If you're writing after, then you can make it look like you're writing a prophecy, but they weren't written during that time frame. So most of them were not written during the time frame of the person, but then they were assigned to and given the name of that person. Jesus loves you. You can't change that. Yeah, because Jesus doesn't exist. The Jesus of the Bible does not exist. So a fictitious character cannot love. That would be like saying Romeo and Juliet, like Juliet loves me. It's a fictitious character. She can't love me. She can't love me at all. Spider-Man can't love me. Jean Grey, she can't love me. Storm can't love me. I would love to have Storm loving me. I would. I'm a comic book nerd. I would love for Storm to love me, but she just can't. Some men deconstruct the Bible because of the righteous laws that God revealed unto them. I have no idea exactly what you mean by that because I can take that in 2 different ways. Uh, but I'm going to say that no, most of the people that I deal with, we deconstructed the Bible because we found the stories to not fit history and that they don't work. Do I answer calls? Do I let people come on here, Adam? Is that what you're saying? If you come on here, yes. If people, yeah, let me go ahead and say this. If you call me through Facebook, no, I do not answer those calls when people call me through Facebook. I don't, because I get like 7 or 8 of those calls every day. Didn't Daniel predict the time Jesus would come? No. What Christians did is go back and look at some of the predictions of people like Daniel and Ezekiel and Isaiah and twist the story to make it fit the Jesus narrative. And even some of the Jesus narratives was written in order to fit some of the predictions of the Old Testament prophets. So, like, uh, for instance, where many people look and read and it says that young virgin will give birth. The original writings of that said a young virgin has given birth, and it was actually talking about Hezekiah's birth, and it was talking in the present moment, and that is why those were written. And that was written by one of the followers of Isaiah, who was continuing his the work of Isaiah. Then that was during the time frame of the Babylonian captivity that was written. But no, they don't they're not prophesizing the coming of Jesus. So I didn't see if he responded. Yes, I do allow people to come onto the live, Adam. Would you like to come onto the live, Adam? So, and when people, the 70 weeks of Daniel, the 70 weeks of Daniel is not a prediction of Jesus. When Daniel, the book of Daniel is really focusing in on, when you look at it, it's really focusing in on what's going to happen to the Jewish people and how they're going to be delivered out of the hands of the Babylonians. Yeah, right. So for the most part, those predictions are more can be more attributed to the Persians and Darius coming in and freeing them from their time frame and sending them back to Jerusalem so that they can reestablish themselves. Daniel is not concerned about a Jesus Messiah. He's looking for the Jewish Messiah that will overthrow the government to which they are in, and which is exactly what Darius did, was to overthrow the Babylonian government and free the Judaites from their captivity so that they can um, go back to Israel. So he was speaking of that time frame. What is my opinion on the Apocrypha? The Apocrypha is just, most of it is fan fiction to answer questions that were then canonized, or wait, let me rephrase that. Even before canonization, some of the books of the Apocrypha were written in order to answer questions that people were asking, that where gaps was in the Bible. But then other parts of it, because it didn't line up with what was canonized, they decided that it was good for reading but not authoritative. And most of that was done by some of your early church fathers like Jerome and Augustus and Irenaeus. And quoting scripture does not work. You can't, the Bible can't justify itself. If that's the case, then the Quran justifies itself, and that makes it true. The Bhagavad Gita justifies itself and makes it true. So you quoting it don't work. Oh, something's happening on the TikTok. See, this is why I don't like that damn TikTok sometimes. There's always a problem with TikTok. Does that go for the Book of Enoch too? Yes, the Book of Enoch was definitely written as fan fiction because people had questions about this guy Enoch. Like, where did Enoch go? What happened to this guy Enoch? Is it true that there is more? We have no information about Enoch, and they rolled with it to write this fan fiction concerning him. I don't know what goes on with TikTok, y'all. TikTok people, I just need y'all to like up this thing. If you're liking the live on TikTok, hit a whole bunch of hearts, because for some reason I can watch somebody else TikTok for an hour, 2 hours, and they never go away. But mine always seem to go away. Always seem to go away. Um, so was Enoch an alien? So what I was saying about Enoch is that because they had questions about this Enoch guy, they a fan fiction began to wrote being written because they had questions about these Nephilim and the fallen. A fan fiction was being was developed, and Enoch wasn't even developed until around the 300s to 200s BCE, right? Because I'm telling the truth. Yeah, they try to get rid of me. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for the roses. But but yeah, it wasn't even written during the time frame before Genesis and all these other books, but it was written later because people were questioning these things. And anytime you see people questioning these things, that's when other fan fictions begin to develop. Or if there are political shifts, then people develop their own fan fiction. So, like when we was talking about the Apocrypha earlier, some of those books were written because people started diverging from what the primary teachings were going on. So, the whole Gnostic movement, for instance, and most of his writings were happening because people had a problem with looking at the Old Testament God and seeing how evil he was and all the punishing that he was doing, and so they had to say that Jesus' teachings were different, so they couldn't be the same God. So that created the entire Gnostic movement, right? And so then you get all these Gnostic writings, and people they had a large following up until around the 5th century. And then when Theodosius came into power in the 5th century, he was like, nah, if you don't follow the Orthodox Christianity that is under the government of Rome, and I'm going to make all this the religion of Rome, then you die. That's it. That's it. MDK. You got to go. So it didn't work that way. So that's where you get a lot of those apocryphers and everything. And to Gabby's statement here about the canonization, that's it, and it is really a lot of it is based on the canonization. So what you really have to start back at the time frame about 150 CE with Justin Martyr. And even though Justin Martyr and Augustus and Jerome and Irenaeus and Marcion, and Marcion wasn't accepted, but they all started putting together what they thought should be the canon. It is not until you have the Council of Nicaea and the Nicene Creed is written that after that, it wasn't done during the time frame of the Council of Nicaea, but after that, Athanasius his job was to make sure that the Roman government was still participating in Easter and whatnot at the same time. So Athanasius would also, within the letter that he would send out for when they would celebrate Easter, would say these are the books that should be canon to the Bible. He took Irenaeus's 4 Gospels because Irenaeus named the 4 Gospels, and then he looked at the writings of Paul because the writings of Paul followed a more Greco-Roman philosophy, and he kept saying these are the ones from 325 all the way up until it actually got canonized in 369 time frame, and then further established about like 20-30 years later. And then that became the canon, and all of the books were considered heretical. Some books that wind up being in the Apocrypha were decided that they weren't fully heretical, but they weren't fully authoritative either. So if your books didn't follow the Gospels template and lean towards the Greco-Roman philosophies of like Neoplatonism and Antonianism, then they were excluded. So it truly became a Roman religion during that time frame. From 325 is when it switched from being this hodgepodge of different variations of Christianity, some more Judaite like, some more Coptic, some more Gnostics, and then some was Roman, Greco-Roman. 325, when it got support from the Roman government, is when it shifted to being a more of a Greco-Roman religion and not a religion of the Levant. So that's how the Bible got canonized. And of course, as you move through time, through the Dark Ages, what they call the Dark Ages and whatnot, you get to a point where Martin Luther then decides that, hey, we want to reorganize the church. And initially, those Bibles, the Gutenberg, the Tinsdales, even the King James, had the Apocrypha as part of it. But then by the time we get into the 1800s and early 1900s, the Apocrypha is then taken out of even their versions of the Bible. I actually remember having a King James version, an authorized King James version that had an Apocrypha in it. Don't know if you can answer this question, but or not. But are all Bibles a product of Hellenism and well, yeah, that's pretty much what I was just explaining. The Bible today is more of a Hellenistic book. It's a Greco-Roman book. Uh, so I did a video like yesterday or the day before where I was saying that basically Christianity is not so much a white man's religion as much as it is a Greco-Roman religion because of the control that they took from 325 up until today, right? So they took it over. Trying to make sure y'all throwing comments real fast. So if I miss your comment, my apologies. I'm trying to hit as many as I possibly can. So wouldn't that mean that some of the books are more accurate and not fan fiction? They exclude it because it doesn't meet their standard. More accurate? Can't necessarily say that. Now, books like the Gospel, it depends on the book. So let's, for instance, take the book, the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas doesn't incorporate so many of these big miracles and things like that. It is like reading Nietzsche or reading uh, some philosopher's book, and they just making these wise sayings and giving you an idea of like kind of a mental mysticism. So the Gospel of Thomas, yeah, I'll give that one to say that it could be a more accurate book as far as there was this guy named Yahshua who was walking around claiming to be the Messiah, and these were some of the wise things that he said. But it doesn't give into all these miracles that you find in the Gospels. So a book telling some wise statements, that's plausible and more accurate than feeding 5,000 people with a two-piece fish sandwich, casting out demons from a man who was tied to a rock, and the demons asking permission to go into the pigs, and the pigs jumping off a cliff. So, but at the end of the day, it's still the miracle. The Bible version of Yahshua is fan fiction, or at minimum, it is based on somebody who was going around preaching and teaching a different type of Judaism that then became legendized. And it is the legend part, like kind of like Hercules. Hercules, most likely a king of Argos, did some things, but then those things became a big fish story, and then he rose up into heaven to be with his father God, Zeus. Yeah, King James did write uh, a book about demonology and witchcraft, following suit with the Solomon and the Solomon's Keys, a book of demonology. Yeah, and the Bible is full of a lot of hatred, a lot of violence. Yeah, so and and you got to think in the time frame of, and this is one of the parts that people seem to not want to do. When you look at somebody like a King James, for instance, right? King James was writing at a time frame where they believed in a lot of magical stuff that we don't believe in today, right? Solomon existed. If Solomon existed, it was during a time frame where they believed that you can have Urim and Thummim, and you can use those as magical divination devices. So people of that day believing that they could write a mystical book of how to control demons is plausible in their mind because they believe that those types of things are possible. And so them writing it wasn't a problem. Now, as we became more scientifically, we we get more scientific knowledge, we come to realize that those types of things are less plausible because there's no proof of it. Uh, if we could conjure up a demon and build a whole building, as according to the Keys of Solomon, he conjured up a demon to build the second temple, then, hey, Why aren't we doing that today? Where's the proof of that today? When is somebody doing that today? But none of those things happen. Al, I'm gonna tell you the same thing I told the other guy. You can have your opinions, but if you get into name calling, you can get banned. Because if you can't be respectful, then you take your version of Christian love hate and go on somewhere else. Well, okay. Is there empirical evidence do you have to verify that there are no eyewitnesses to the Bible claims? Most of the time, it is the Bible itself that proves itself to not be an eyewitness account. And then, yes, there is empirical evidence to show that the Bible claims were not done by any eyewitnesses. Just as I was talking earlier about the fact that the book of John talks about, it says that we are writing this to claim what John said that he saw and said that he did. So within the Bible itself, it lets you know that John was not written by eyewitness. It was written by whoever this we is. The book Luke. Luke is known to have been a disciple of Paul. And Luke is specifying that he is writing based on what he heard and not based on anything he saw, because he was a disciple of Paul. Then we look at the time frame that these books were written. None of these books were written at a time frame of any of these people. All of them written decades later, if not 100 years later. And so none of them are written by eyewitnesses. And then all the gospels are written anonymously. So yeah, the information about the Bible within itself demonstrates that it wasn't written by any eyewitnesses, but written by other people who are claiming that it is eyewitness account. But even within their claim, they demonstrate it is not. Even in the book of Acts, which is supposed to be written by Luke as well, we know that it's being written by someone else. It's not being written. It's not being written by. Let me phrase. It's not being written by eyewitness account, because even if Luke being a disciple of Paul, Luke wasn't traveling with Paul in all the places that the book of Acts talk about, nor was he traveling with the other apostles. So he's not writing based on anything he saw, but writing based on what he's being told. And the thing about it is, if you're writing based on what you're being told, how are you claiming it to be the inspired word of God? You're just writing based on what other people have said that they said that they said that they saw. And the fact that the book has errors, as Christopher is saying, the fact that there are errors within the book demonstrates that it can't be the word of any God, because if this God is supposed to be perfect, all knowing, all seeing, there would be no errors, there would be no contradictions, there would be no changes. Roz said, I learned that John is a Gnostic book and Matthew, Mark, and Luke were written by another group. Yes, there are some people who do think that John is written more Gnostic, is written from a more of a Gnostic point of view or more Nazarene point of view than the other ones. Matthew and Mark were definitely written speaking more towards the Jewish audience, and Luke was written more speaking more towards um, the Greek, the Roman audience. And of course, the rest of the Bible thereafter was written more towards the Roman audience as well. And that none of them were um, given a name until Irenaeus in 180. So it's just different people. And John, like I said earlier, John specifically said we. I really want to know who that we is. That would be great if they would have said who they were. But why were they all written anonymously? Um, Gabby asked, which other books have I interacted with? I mean, I read the Bhagavad Gitas and the Vedics, but I didn't like go deep into them because I already understood. I kind of had an understanding of them going into them. but I read those. I read the Tao. I read a whole bunch of them. Now, don't get me wrong, Nicholas. Which books besides Thomas, which you said earlier, would be the ones you would recommend as truthful or also note or worthwhile? I'm not saying the Book of Thomas is truthful. Does it have some levels of good wisdom in it? Sure. Truthful as far as that being the actual words that some dude named Jesus was saying, can't guarantee that. Uh, I did enjoy reading the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Secret Writings of Peter. Um, I actually like the Gospel of Judas. That was an interesting read as well. But as far as truthful, now if you want to get something that just helps you out better in life, I tell you to read The Alchemist, The Kabbalion, The Tao. Most of the writings that are attributed to the Abrahamic religions, I would not recommend to most people, not even slightly. But yeah, the other writings, if I was forced to follow any of the major religions, it would probably be Taoism. If I was forced to follow any of them, because at least in Taoism, all this miracle shit is not happening. These unbelievable things are not happening. It's more focused on getting into the energetic. Have you been getting? What is going? See, this is why I don't like this damn TikTok. It's more about getting into the energetic flow of the universe, and it's more speaking towards frequency. Let's get those hearts up on TikTok because it'll keep like bowing out for some strange reason. I don't know. See if I can catch some. Trying to go fast because this is going to be a short live today. This one is going to be short. Normally, I'm live for like a couple of hours. And yes, the Bible. If you utilize the Bible's who begat who and when how old they were when they did all they begetting, the Bible goes back about 6,600 and some odd years, and we know that the Earth is much older than that. Now this is Tupelo. Am I saying it Tupelo? Saying that correctly? Interesting comment here on Facebook. I mean YouTube. He's saying that the Bible stories and events are allegories and symbols. I think that is when people want to hold on to the Bible, they realize that the Bible has a lot of problems and that it doesn't make any sense. So, in order to hold on to it, you have to take it and say that it's just all allegories and symbols, and you really only have one piece of the Bible that actually tells you that it's allegories, and it's really speaking of the time frame of Abraham, and that is in Galatians 4. But the Bible was, for the people who was writing it and the people who was believing in it, it wasn't something that was written as allegorical. They believed Abraham lived. They believed the Noah's flood happened. They believed Genesis is how we got started. They took those stories as a literal story. They believed that Moses conquered all those people, that Joshua then conquered into the Canaan. They believed those things were literal. And when it's talking about being in the captivity of the Assyrians or the Babylonians, they accepted those things as literal things. They think that Jesus did those literal miracles. When people try to switch it now to make it into something that is, mystical, that is the fact that you can't stand, it doesn't fit right with you, of this evil God that's being spoken of, this narcissistic genocidal maniac. And so you have to convert it into being something mystical in order for you to still hold on to it, because it's hard for a lot of people to let go of this book, because if they don't let go of it, then they feel like, thank you for the rose, then they feel like they are going to lose out on some heavenly abode and might go to hell. And so that fear keeps people attached to it. So no, it's not mystical. It's not allegorical. They believe these people existed. So that doesn't fit. Hello, my darling. Hello, mi amor. Ah. What? de nada or something like that, or whatever I'm supposed to say in Spanish. Y'all know Angelina just came in the door, so you know this is gonna be over real soon now.
Been forever, people. Welcome back. Hello, people. Hello.
I'm moving to San Antonio by myself because this foolishness is not going with me.
She can't leave us.
But I will say y'all can thank Angelina for me getting back on this live because she had been on my ass about it. Deborah could say, hey.
Hi.
Oh my gosh. She is like too much damn energy.
I got one more day.
Now, this is another reason why some people wind up staying with the Bible. Stop. So your biggest problem with the biblical record is that you don't have anything better, legally better, or if you do, you are keeping it for you and yours. And some people do that. They feel like they got to have something better. Well, I can tell you, there are many other books out there that are better. There are many different systems out there that are better. That's why I say that if I had to choose a religion, Buddhism is better than Christianity, than the Bible, than any of the Abrahamics. Buddhism is better. Taoism is even better than that. Hermeticism is even better than that. I don't know why you can't hear. If anybody else having problems hearing me on Facebook or TikTok, Facebook or YouTube, but all of those are better than the Bible. So, but how many people are willing to look into those kinds of things? They're not. And for me, Hermeticism is like the best. I just rather go with Hermeticism than the rest of them. But most people hold on to the Bible because they grew up believing in the Bible. They grew up indoctrinated into it, or they grew up in a country where you are completely surrounded by the Bible. And so you may not have been going to church, but you're surrounded by churches. You may not have been taught by your parents, but you are in schools and people talking about pray this, pray that. You on social media, pray, pray, pray. So you hear it all the time. And so it becomes the thing that if you do make some kind of allegiance, you go towards it because it's something that you will feel comfortable in. And there's a whole bunch of other people that believe it. So you find yourself a tribe. Oh, all these other people believe in it, so I'm going to believe in it too. And now you fit into the mold of all the other people. And so you get comfortable in that situation. Going into something new with not as many people is hard. But if you had grown up in Kuwait, you weren't really Muslim, but then all of a sudden you have some change, your ass is probably going to be Muslim. If you go live in, Tibet, you're probably going to wind up being Buddhist. Do you consider yourself a scholar? Not in the sense of someone who went to schools and got a degree and all that kind of stuff. No. Uh, if I had to give it a term, I'll say a layman scholar. Because I'm not big on titles. What proof that the law of the Bible is better than others? Okay, let's think about this for a second. The law of the Bible tells you that if your child is disobedient, that you bring him to the elders and you stone him. The law of the Bible says that if a young maiden is found not to be a virgin and the new husband contested, that if they don't have that little cheesecloth up under her to catch her blood from her hymen breaking, then you are to stone her, right? So the Bible has so many horrible lessons that you can take a slave from the nations around you and make them your property and pass them down to generations. The Constitution of the United States, although written for land-owning Anglo-Saxon white males, is still better than the Bible. The Buddhism doesn't have slavery in it. That's still better than the Bible. It doesn't have the mistreatment of women in it, better than the Bible. Hermeticism doesn't have any of that stuff in it, better than the Bible. The Tao doesn't have any of that in it, better than the Bible. Hell, the Tao talks about a balance of your masculine and feminine energy, where the Bible is totally masculine, better than the Bible. So if you think the Bible is the best thing out there, that is because you've never taken the time to actually read or study any of the other religions or books or philosophies. So until you do such, you cannot necessarily make that claim. Ooh, that sun is moving right in my face. Oh, this is one of the quotes from the Gospel of Thomas. Actually, it's one of the ones I like. Um, Mike, I ain't even gonna try to butcher your last name. Tell us how the end will be. Why do you seek the end when you don't know the beginning? Go back to the start. That is one of the sayings of the Gospel of Thomas. Always looking for the end, but can't even get to the point where you can grasp the beginning. And that's what you hear Christians doing all the time. That's what they do all the time. All right, guys, I know today was short. I said it was going to be short in the very beginning. This is getting my feet back wet into it. So I will start doing more and more lives. I just had to, you got to throw yourself in there to get that first one started. Plus, the sun is getting all in my face right now, and we will continue to have more and more lives. This one was short. This is why I normally do about 2 to 3 hours. Um, so I look forward to it. So if you don't follow the pages, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, please subscribe to the channels, subscribe to the pages, so that I usually post on Facebook and YouTube about 30 minutes before I go on, so that people can be aware of it. And then we go from there. But there will be a lot more lives coming down the pipe. Um, I know this one was short, Gabby. Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Yes, and once I get to San Antonio, I will start writing a book about deconstructing. Um, so I will start doing that when I get to when we move to San Antonio next week. We're moving next week, so let me move and get settled, and then I'm gonna start. All right. So I look forward to it. So until next time, people, which might be tomorrow afternoon. I don't know. We'll see. I know I got some running around to do. But I appreciate everybody. Always remember that you have to free yourself to be yourself. Oh, hey, go and get some merch. Go get some merch. I post on the bottom of all my videos where you can get some merch. Go on and get you some of that free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration merch. All right. But self plug there. But I look forward to our next encounter. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration.